do the call. Sorry, I was at a really good conference. Hey guys, I was at a really good conference with other brokers, or kind of a broker teacher, I guess, on brokerage growth and the staff and whatever. So, Will, I know we were just talking. We were talking about narrow equity deals, and they are frustrating. But this is the reason we say, when you get a seller on the phone, even if the deal looks sad, looks undoable, still the form is critical, because and keeping your own notes is critical, by the way, as well, in case the form doesn't connect or whatever, but always having that a reference. And we also do ask you to email that to Ryan and myself as well. Email us your notes, even if you put it in the form, just from a redundancy standpoint and from a convenience standpoint. We can look at it before it ever comes through the form. But there's a bunch of ways to slice the apple, and you might have a person who's break even current value, or is break even from its whatever, from its what he owes on it, or what he claims he needs, or whatever. But there may be a bunch of ways to slice it. For case in point, Nair and I just got off a call, and I'm going to fictionalize this a little bit, Nair, but Nair and I just got off a call that very wealthy investor, tired landlord, but extremely wealthy. So tired in a very, I don't want this anymore basis, not in I need this gone. Tired in a, I don't want to deal with a broker and whatever. He's like, been doing this 46 years, owns 200 buildings, or something like that. So 200 whatever, properties, whatever. So doesn't need to sell, but doesn't want to freaking deal with it. He's 69, knows his kids don't want it, knows he doesn't want a 1031, because he's like, I'm going to have huge capital gains when I sell. I don't want a 1031 because that means I buy the next thing, because 1031 is capital gains deference if you buy the next horse. So big beautiful bill is an option, maybe seller finance is an option, whatever. And he's got a property, and this is where a good cautionary tale. Nair and I researched it as being a 5-unit, and the dichotomy was it transacted for 1.4 or something a few years ago, and Nair and I were valuing it at like 300,000 to 400,000. And so my first question when I got on the phone with this guy after I did some credibility was, hey, sir, no offense, but the notes we have, and you never blame them for bad information, notes we have say income and expenses seem to indicate like 400,000 value, and we see it was transacted, a few months ago or years ago, whatever, for a bump load more. So before we get into questioning your valuation, what don't we understand? And he clarified immediately. He's like, it's not. He's like, you saw it as a 5-unit, yes. He's like, it's really a 21 unit. He's like that building, that the structure you see, I own all of it. It looks like I own one piece of it, but a bunch of different deeds, a few different ownerships, and I own the whole thing. Like, okay. And then so a not so motivated seller isn't always that. A non-equity deal might have other outcomes, because, as I just mentioned to Will, how do I put this? They may not have equity, but they may still have a huge motivation to move, get rid of it. And that's where you've got that's still your leverage at the end of the day. And of course, if there's no equity, and I was checking, I think Alex just texted me. If there's no equity, that may mean, okay, it's listing time. It's and I need to call those Ohio brokers and see if we can do anything with that 15-unit. But so the first part of the conversation is, don't end the conversation without filling out the form, getting in front of me and Ryan, and letting us review to see if there's an ending. And it still isn't an ending, because if we get on the phone with you and the seller, and by the way, I want to clarify that when I'm saying seller, I mean owner. I mean guy in control. I don't mean the wholesaler. if it's a wholesaler that's in the way, well, that may be a different conversation. We get on the phone with them and let's say, hey guys, you know what? We can offer you, sir, these 3 options. Nope, none of those options work for me. I can't do those options. Okay, great. Well, if you change your mind or you have another option, please call us. Hey Ryan, um, and or we'll check back with you, and we check back with them, a few weeks, a month, whatever, because we know they want to sell. We know they didn't like any of the choices we had. We, researched a little bit maybe, but we're circling back to see when they're ready to move, because maybe they got their first notice of foreclosure letter, got terrified, called us, but weren't terrified enough to take what we were offering. And Ryan and I know for me, I can't count the number of deals that we've seen come on the market with wholesalers or brokers later. And we're like, shit, we talked to that person 6 months ago and we just didn't circle back. And the reality is that a lot of this game is being in front of them when they're ready. That's the reason bandit signs exist. That's the reason flyers exist. That's the reason all of this bullshit exists, is because we might call you in December, but it's not till April 15th when your taxes are due that you discover you're screwed. You may be feeling the heat in September, in December, but when the bank actually schedules your foreclosure hearing, that heater just turned up a lot. So any questions, anything else, anybody wants to kick in? Will, I know you and I were kind of in the middle of something, so if I left off on something, let me know.
That's good so far.
All right.
Sorry, I'm a little late. I just logged in. I just got off the call with our going to be our next deal.
Oh, good. Okay, you want to fill us in, kind of generally? Yeah. You and I can pick it up later, but you want to jump in?
Yeah. Yep. So we had this deal come in for a half double in Old Forge of all places, and if I'm going to get a half double, Old Forge is the place I want to do it. So basically, this guy inherited it from his dad. Mortgage is somewhere like 70 to 79,000. It's not out of the 70s, so it's somewhere in there. Basically, everything's been remodeled within the last 10-ish years. He said it's all modern on the inside. And I said, what do you want for it? He goes, well, let's say the mortgage is 79. He goes, I'd be happy with something with an 8 on it. He goes, hey, if you want to give me more, I'd be even better, but I could do something with an 8. I didn't even look up the comps for it, but I just thought to myself, gut reaction, because I just got off the phone with him. My gut reaction is, if it's what he says it is, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, I'd be willing to roll the dice on that one.
I would say absolutely, and so I'll do that all day long, and I'm not near Old Forge right now. I'm coming off 115, but if it was a matter of, hey, this guy needs to see us today.
Well, he lives in Connecticut, and he's going to be out there on Friday for like an insurance claim.
One of us can do that, yeah.
Yep. So we're gonna whether it's one of us, both of us, whatever. I said somebody will be out there Friday, so I booked it. I booked it at Friday at 2 with him, and so I'm really excited about that. And I said, hey, we're ready to move quickly on this, like bang bang. So he's okay with that. And
before I forget, Avoca, just circle back with that guy and see where his head's at.
Okay.
Just A, that's one of those, don't let it fall off. But B, I don't know if the numbers work for me as a purchaser, but I know that location would work for us as a sign if we ended up with it. But I still think there's spread, because a double or whatever it was in Avoca works. But yeah, so basically, guys, like that's a good example of a guy who, he lives in Connecticut, and I lived in Connecticut. I don't know where this guy's story is, but cost of living out there is absurd. Everything out there is bigger. Okay, cost of living, incomes, whatever. My partner and I were making low 6 figures, low hundreds, and we weren't saving shit. We were renting an apartment. We weren't saving crap. We come out here on half the income, just her income, and we're able to buy a house. So like that's the scale difference. And he's 3 hours away. What was it? Sorry.
Yeah. So sorry to jump in there. So here's the interesting thing for Will. For one thing that you can keep in mind, the guy is saying, "I called all these companies, but I didn't realize that yesterday was a holiday." He goes, "And thank you for calling me back." But the really cool thing was, you got to try to find some common ground with these people, because he's telling me he's in Connecticut, and I stopped him in his tracks and I said, "What part of Connecticut are you from?" And he told me the town, Meriden. And I said, "Hey, you know what? About just maybe 10, 15 miles down the road," I said, "my ancestors actually founded Wallingford and New Haven," which totally caught him off guard. And now he's interested in that. So now I'm not just another phone call to a random person. He's got a connection built now. And
Yep.
now I'm he's gonna call us back. He knows who I am. He knows the number, and it's stuck in his mind what I told him about the connection with Connecticut. So we found this common ground, and now I know for sure he knows who I am, and he's gonna call back.
Yeah, and that's absolutely key. And Nair caught Nair's caught a couple interesting things, and these are all may not pan out, but they're still critical. They're still important. Like this one guy, Nair thought he found a 5-unit in Chester, which is a Philadelphia suburb, basically. And we ran the numbers. He got, we did the basic research. He got some rents and whatever. And it was owned by a huge company. They didn't want to divulge anything, so we're public recording this whole thing. And we came up with a value based on the incomes we could come up with of 400,000, something like that. And then I see that somebody bought the thing for 1.5, and so he gets us on the phone with the owner of the company, the guy that owns the company that owns the 200 units of, more than just this, 69-year-old guy. And first thing out of my mouth was the broker credibility conversation. Second thing out of my mouth was my own purchase credibility conversation. And third thing was, straight up, sir, I think I got something wrong here, because the numbers we came up with were a 5-unit in Chester, and the income expenses put it at like $300,000, $500,000 value. And yet I look at the last sale for the address of 1.6. I said, so something in my head is broken. And he's like, you're public record. I said, yeah, public record. And he's like, okay, there's the problem. He's like, it looks like I only own the corner of the structure. He's like, I own the entire structure all the way around 2 sides of the block. He's like, I own 12 units there and 9 units like kind of adjacent. He's like, okay, great. So run me through that, what it is that I said, give me some basics. And then we found out the guy owns other properties he may want to sell. We found out that he's wealthy. His kids don't want it. He doesn't want to trust it because he could throw it in trust and he could just have his kids get checks forever. That's not the path he wants to go in. He doesn't want a 1031 because he has to protect his capital gains. So like he gives us all this stuff in the next like 5 minutes, and then he gives us a $5,000 course on buying notes in like 30 seconds. So we've built a connection, and I said to him, listen, we're going to spit out based on what we know now in public record. And I said, understand. I said, I don't know if this is going to be a deal. I said, you don't need the money. You may not come to where we need it to be, but let's at least start the conversation. And something to the effect of, he said, great. And I'm also going to, the end result was, I also have other stuff I want to sell. We can also talk about it. I said, great. So we're buyers, we're brokers, we're wholesalers. I said, you know the game. You've worked with this for 40 years. And made the connection in terms of didn't waste his time. Had, I think, a pretty good 30-minute conversation, but I don't think he felt it was unvaluable. Didn't drag him into the minutia of, well, what does apartment 1 pay? What does apartment 2 pay? So made the connection that this guy is going to be a memorable contact. And if nothing else, like I said to Nair, if we do nothing with this guy, this is the guy we call every 3 months and just kind of connect and maybe ask him what he thought of the latest, housing report or something. Just stay in his mind. So when he, maybe at some point he comes across something and he throws it to us. That connection, when I'm telling you, listen to their stories, is enormous. All right. So any other things that anybody thought of before I kind of, and Ryan, you too, before I kind of rattle on a few other points?
No, I think that was just the only new thing that I had. We can finish up our other call later. But yeah, that's all I really had right now.
Okay. All right. So anybody else? All right. So a lot of good. So Will and I have been talking over the last few days, and kind of it's been a consistent level of increasing deal flow. And listen, we all feel that. Ryan and I kind of both went off on different conferences or time away to refocus and whatever. And the whole thing is, okay, the deal flow. It all comes down to, this is a feast or famine business. until we stabilize the deal flow. And, I don't think it's one person feels it worse than the other. I think it just doesn't matter. And guys, I got to tell you, my personal brokerage, my personal company top line number is 20,000 a month. And it was like, oh my God, I could live on. Yeah, I don't. That's not. And the important thing, one of the coaches that I met at this conference yesterday, he played a video from some TikTok guru, whoever the hell it was. But the guy's phrase is the phrase to live by. Revenue doesn't matter. Profit matters. Okay. Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, buyer of McDonald's name from McDonald's brothers, he had thousands of stores in the late 60s, maybe more than that. And he was bankrupt. He himself was bankrupt because his math from the McDonald's brothers was 1% of whatever goes to him. That was his operational money for the McDonald's business. And he found that he was paying so much out in operations and to the franchisees and whatever. Like McDonald's brothers take 99, everybody else lives off 1. And I forget what it was of. That he was dying. Millions and billions and billions served, like the sign said. Revenue was phenomenal. Actual pocket money to Ray Kroc Enterprises was crap. And so that is the lesson for all of us. It doesn't matter. It matters what, it matters what you're putting in your pocket, bluntly. It matters what your company's putting in their pocket. So don't ever look and say, oh, Ryan and Steve are bigger, therefore, no, we're all in the same, the transaction, the deal flow, we're not in the same boat, but we're all facing the same challenges. And what we're doing right now is we have the tools in place. We have the CRM. Actually, for different packages of data, we have 4 CRMs because we have one set of data, which I'll get to with Mike Rubencam, which is an AI, a very high-end AI package, which we thought was going to be Luzerne County 7,000 records a month. It's now the ability for us to pull up to 100,000 records within Luzerne County. And this is everything Batch Leads does plus a level of AI intelligence. We have the Batch Leads line. We have the Land OS line. We have the Tracked IQ line, which is the self-storage line. So we have all the tools for all the data you want. We have all the technology now, and we'll be launching the AI dialer this week, which is going to make calls. And Will and I will raise the idea of a power dialer. And listen, we collaboratively can talk about adding a power dialer expense if it's really going to work. Because by that I mean, we can add another tool to the box, but if not enough people are using the tool, it's not a tool worth buying. But the point is, right now we are at the point where what really hits the road is taking that data and calling it and being in front of those people and putting every conversation into the form. And the process for right now, because we have so many different things going on, is put it in the form, keep a copy of what you put in the form in your records, and send us a copy, me and Ryan, by email for our records. And then that way, if it gets lost in the form or something doesn't translate, we still have it. It always gets stored, but we just want to make sure we have it. And every seller, even if you think it's a trash deal, we still have a conversation about it. The ones we shouldn't hear about right now are the ones where you don't connect with anybody. Even if you get minimal over crap information and you do all the public research, you do the batch leads, you do the comps and whatever, put that in, because they're just a tickle file person. And if it was Nair or Will or Connor, we had the conversation with, here's the address, go ahead and Google it, let me know what you think. Crap conversation, crap motivation, not worth a lot of time. However, still worth throwing in the system, collecting some data, and going back to the guy and very politely saying, well, here's what I found online after you and Ryan or you and I talk about it, or all of us, because that person's a tickle file. They weren't motivated enough the day you called them. They might be motivated enough next month, next week, whatever. So, and equity, and I said this wrong to Will, and I want to correct it. I said equity never matters. Equity matters. Thin equity is hard. You don't need to be. The question is the question I pushed back on was, it's not a matter of. I only look at high equity sellers. I only look at low equity sellers. By the way, equity is the difference between what they owe and what it's worth. Some philosophies are, I only want the people with low loan to value because they have a lot of room to play with. Other logic is, I want high loan to value because the low loan to value guys have less pressure. I say I kind of don't care about that. I care about, can I make the deal work? Can I make it work? If you have a person who's equal or upside down and they've got a low interest loan and they got 12, 15, 20 years left on the loan, I can subject to that. I can take a 3% subject to right now and make something happen. So you don't ever throw away the fish. You put it in the boat. You bring it on the boat and let you, Ryan, and I, or you, me, and I, or whatever combination, kind of play it out. Also, the other
what if they owe like? I was saying, what if they owe the entire mortgage and they don't have any equity in the property and it's like zero?
There's still times where that will work. And does that make it less likely? Possibly. But is it still worth the conversation? Because here it all that switches back to their motivation. And what I mean by that is that, so first of all, there's a few scenarios, and maybe Ryan can chime in if I'm forgetting any, but one scenario is they have 20 years left on a mortgage at 3%. And this is what the building's worth today. And let's assume there is some upside if someone makes improvements, but even if not, but it's always better if it's, hey, it's worth what the mortgage is today, but if I throw 20,000 at it, it's worth another 100 grand. But that's nice, but that's not necessary, because if their mortgage and taxes and their ball of wax is $1,200 a month, and someone can rent that thing for 16, or under current mortgage conditions, they would pay 17, 18 to buy it and live there. Okay. We now can go to somebody and say, listen, we'll give you, a rent to own move-in buyer, Mr. Move-in buyer, give us some upfront money. That's how we all eat. And then you take over the deal and you get to live in something for equal or less than you'd pay a modern bank without going to a bank. The payment is $1,200, we can rent it for $1,600, or a lot of, and there's a few others in there too that I'm kind of forgetting, but a lot of it depends on the seller motivation. Connor and I and Ryan and I are working on one out in Newcastle. It's a rent to own buyer in a contract he needs to get out of. And I got to tell you, there's layers to that, because now we got to get the actual owner on the paperwork and yada yada. But for whatever reason, this house is no longer suitable for his life. Okay, he's been fairly honest with us about what we think the problems are, and whatever. But he started at 25,000 for something people live in. There's a small problem with the septic, but he has a $500 quote from somebody. And now he wants 28 because he wants some walking away money. But Connor thinks he has a friend who could buy it for 35. Maybe we move that to 38. So it's like, and the comps all look okay. Things sell finished. If we threw 15, 20 grand at it, it's going to sell for 75. So, okay, 75, 2/3 of 75 is 50. That's what a flipper could spend on it. Flipper could spend bought, fixed, and done 50. Flipper buys it for 35 from us. Flipper throws 15 at it. He's at 50. Flipper sells it for 75. He makes his nut there. We've made our nut up front. It works. Does it work on a rental? The numbers work on a rental. So there's not a lot of room on that. So yeah, it all depends on the seller's motivation. This guy wants out, like to the point he's looking at apartments right now, even though we haven't closed a deal yet. If you have that seller that is equal or maybe even a little upside down, it all depends, frankly, what they're willing to give up in order to make a deal. And even if they say, oh, I must walk away with $3 grand, 10 grand, that, or whatever number, pick a number. That may not be where they're at now or in a month when we start to say, hey, listen, this is what it's really, really worth. And so you're right, the opportunities get thinner when it's, hey, your house is worth what you owe on it. But that's where the whole subject to Pace Morby, universe exists. And I can tell you, I was not suspicious of Pace Morby. I didn't expect he was actually the real deal. I thought he was just selling a course, which he does make a crap load of his courses. But I know somebody who knows him, and Pace actually knows the game. This is not a game Pace plays much anymore. He plays a school game. But yeah, sub 2 can work, and I've done enough sub 2s. They can work. So the point is, yeah, I mean, a long answer to your question, but the equity can be thin and still survives. It still can be a good deal. The last thing I'll say on that is, remember, there's 3 things in real estate, and none of them are location, because location's a given. It's worth what it's worth. Is price, terms, and timeline. You get to pick 1, maybe 2, and most of the time in our world, terms are cash. Sub 2 is a different set of terms. So terms and timeline. One party can't have both. If they want every dime the property is worth today, and we're an investor, and they don't want to go to a realtor to see if an outside person will make it their forever home, then they've just determined the price, or they owe everything it's worth today. Now we talk about timeline. Which is kind of terms. So, it becomes a terms and timeline conversation. Okay, we can give you your money, but there's got to be some creativity to how you get your money. Anything else, guys?
That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Will, what other questions do you have?
That's it so far. I mean, if we could do sub 2s, that would be cool, because I run into a lot of people with low equity.
Yep.
Who are interested.
Yeah, and that's the reason, Will. You're not wrong. That low equity is more of a challenge, but that's the reason every substantive conversation, and I'm using that word carefully because that's also a license call. There's a level at which unlicensed people shouldn't have substantive conversations, but every conversation with a seller that actually expresses any level of interest of possibly at any point moving on their property, we should have in the forum, we should have in the system, we should have. Because, sub 2 is an option. The other option, which I've never had this particular path, go to a seller, end up going to their bank and buying the note. But we're kind of doing that with this rent-to-own deal. Where we say, hey, you know what? This person wants out of their deal. Okay, now, Mrs. Owner, what do you really want for the property? And Nair, I don't expect this to be the outcome in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? We might go to Mrs. Owner and say, hey, she doesn't need 25, she needs 20. In which case, we go back to Sean and say, listen, we can't give you 20. We already know his number is 3,000. Hey, Sean, listen, we can't give you 28. But you still walk with 3 at this new number. Owners accepted the discount. Done. So that's kind of like buying a note, but not exactly the same. And guys, don't forget, we do have the Land OS. And as I said to Will, I said, look at these other categories. I'm mentioning land, I'm mentioning self-storage. Land OS is more than a batch leads. It's an entire AI, find the deal. How do you make the deal work? What are the options on the deal? It's like a whole community structure, might be the wrong way to play it. Now you've seen it, so maybe we do a different conversation where you show us around. But
yeah.
But basically, we have that. We have the tracked IQ data for self-storage. We have a lot of categories. We also have lending. We do 0%, I call them credit cards, but lines of credit, unsecured. People have good business numbers and good business credit and personal credit, they can get this 0% money. We have DSCR, which is rental lending. We have fix and flip lending. We have a lot of lending categories. And on the lending, the beautiful thing about calling self-storage and lending, for example, is you're going to get a conversation. Why are you going to get a conversation calling a self-storage facility? Because there's a manager somewhere. You're going to talk to a human. Is that human going to be helpful? No idea. But there's a number. If they're not answering their phone, then we definitely want to mail them something because they're a shit run self-storage and they really aren't going to be in business long. On lending, if you were to post on any investor group right now, hey, we do DSCR lending, we do fix and flip lending, you will get people in your DMs right now saying, how the bleep do I borrow money? No question. Will those come to the other end of it? I don't know, but you'll get the starting conversation, and you fill out a form, and a few periods later, you get, we get 1%, you get half of that. Okay, 1% of $100,000 is $1,000. You get $500 for having filled out a form with someone and collected some basic data. So, like, basically, those are there. If you're ever like, oh crap, I did 200 calls today and I didn't get it. Not one person spoke to me. These are a way to have human conversations and start a process. Also, with the AI level data that we have coming in through our partner Mike, his partner on this data only, Mike is a built-in buyer for a itty bitty teeny weeny section of that. Mike is very laser focused on what he wants. However, just like my partner and I in self-storage, who are itty bitty teeny weeny laser focused buyer, we have a built-in deal with Mike that, okay, Mike helped buy this data, or I guess we helped him. And if we bring Mike a deal he wants, we have a set amount that we make. If not, we wholesale it back out, and that's fine. We have our wholesale conversation. So basically, in those two sectors, with the AI data and with storage, there's a built-in buyer sitting there. Not that you guys should focus on it for that. All you need to focus on now is conversations with people who are interested in doing a transaction. And we'll leave lending to the side. It exists. But they want to sell something. They want to buy something, great. You have a very short conversation with them, very polite. You put them in the buyer sheet, in the buyer form, and you do the same thing. You keep your notes and you email the notes to me and Ryan, so it's in 3 different places, whatever. But they're not our target because, number one, if you're not licensed, you technically can't be a buyer's agent. And number two is buyers are, I'll use the polite term, they're non-monogamous. They'll buy from whoever sends them the thing to buy. Sellers, you have the only thing of that address. You have 123 Main Street, somebody else has 124 and 121. But you have the only 123. So we get the seller, we get it at the right number, somebody will buy it.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's why our focus is seller, seller, seller. There is something called reverse wholesaling. You get an active buyer, and I do have a couple of them, and and actually Will, I want to talk to you about possibly running a couple of my buyers between you and Glenn, which distance-wise, they're not near you, Will. Don't worry about that. This is about, I'll give you ways of working them. But they're active buyers that I personally know, and I'll 50-50 the commission, or I should say we'll three-way the commission, you, me, and Ryan. But basically, because I'm going to be doing the legwork because it's up here, you're going to be doing the handling of the buyer, whatever. But the point is, some buyers are worth actually actively searching for. Like this one guy, he buys convenience stores, beer stores, smoke shops, shit like that, or places he can put those. Pretty much Eastern Pennsylvania. But I know this guy. I've sold a couple things to him. I know if we worked him more, we get more sales out of him. But for the most part, buyers will put them in the form and just kind of be aware of them. Whereas sellers are, hey, we just landed this whole Forge deal. Let's work it and see what happens. So really to kind of circle it back again is we have lots of data sources. We have, through batch leads and a couple of the other apps, the ability to go click, click, dial. I'm of the mind, and I'm not saying I'm the only answer here, but I'm of the mind that a power dialer doesn't get us that much further unless we have enough people willing to share the time clock on it. We have it for 24 hours. We have enough people willing to divide it. Because if everyone's available on the same 3 hours, then we're really only using $150 a month product, $200 a month product, 3 hours a day. So are we really getting that value if we're only using it 3 hours a day? But I think my feeling is that's a separate conversation. But the point is, getting on the phone, every conversation you have with a human that has control of a property. The last thing I'm going to say is control means deeded ownership. There's a reason in our sheet that one of our questions is, are you the only owner? And if not, who is? We got to know who the other players on the field are. If you're dealing with a wholesaler, the conversation completely inverts. And it becomes, and this is another area for follow-up, guys, but it becomes, how do we JV that wholesaler into our company? Do they lock a deal up and send it to us and see if we can find a buyer? Maybe, okay. Or do they join with you guys, maybe at a more advanced level, depending on their operation, and bring us more deals? And you get pieces of that. This is not, none of this gets you cut out. You bring us another wholesaler, you bring us a person like you joining, you get pieces of the deal. We always we always pay it forward, whatever. But the point is, if they're not the deeded owner, and they'll say, are you the seller? Yes, I'm the seller. Yeah, they are the seller. Are you the deeded owner? Are you the one who can sign the deed? Oh, well, not exactly. Okay, that's not a problem, but what is exactly? Give me the exactly. There's still a conversation. They don't necessarily they might go in the form, but the more importantly, collect their information and collect everything you would normally collect about the property and everything, and call Ryan and I before we put them in the form. I mean, I guess we probably want to put them in the form, but basically, let's have a conversation, because if they're easycashdeals.com or they're Jake Arnold, those are two huge wholesale companies. They're not going to, I mean, all they're going to say is bring me a buyer and we can talk about compensation. They're not going to be the player. So Ryan and I have to kind of sound out whether they're a true JV partner, but if they're someone like New Western, it's an enormous wholesaler, you're going to call from one of New Western's people saying they have a deal, then if they have a deal, they're not looking for us to help them sell the deal. They're looking for us to buy the deal directly. So if it's a wholesaler, if it's not a deeded owner, a long way of conversation, collect what you can, get every information. And these wholesalers, there's two ways you often tell them. One is they give you 3 lines. I have a 3.2 in Wilkes-Barre for $250 with an ARV of $450 and a repair estimate of $50. Do you want it? Instantly, I know that no seller wrote that. No actual homeowner wrote that. Second of all, that's not nearly enough to know the information. Worth a conversation, but we know who we're dealing with. Or they've got something that looks really professionally written. And you're like, either it was ChatGPT or it was a professional. Still have the conversation, but just those are a couple telltale signs. They start talking about ARV, they start talking, or in the case of, I forget it was Nair or Will, somebody, the seller sent me a contract. That sentence instantly told me it's not the owner, because I have never had a deeded owner say, here's my purchase and sale contract. Not a problem, but tells us who we're dealing with. I've made a good amount of money, and so has Ryan, off of things other wholesalers have brought us. But it does change the temperature of the conversation. Your primary is that person that holds the deed on that property. And here's if you're going on batch leads to filter or whatever. Okay, so 2 other things before I forget. One is, the reason bandit signs, flyers, postcards, work is we might talk to somebody now and they're not desperate enough, like Will says, it's a no equity deal or whatever. The numbers where they want to be, where we need to be, just aren't going to work. We keep in their face, because at some point it becomes where it is going to work. They do need it. They do need it. Sorry, I'm just responding to somebody in the chat group. But the reason bandit signs work is because when they need it, they will grab onto the first lifeboat they see. If you're not that lifeboat, if you've forgotten to follow up with them or whatever, our timing just isn't right. And I don't mean you pointing at you, but whatever, they'll take the next lifeboat. They're not loyal when they're drowning. They're not loyal to which color boat it is or which kind of boat it is. They're looking to not be drowning anymore. So we want to stay visible with them. Even if their deal doesn't work, even if their deal is the same, their motivation might not be. And that's why, and this is one area I failed at more times than I care to count, keeping in touch. That's why we have the forums. That's why we have the back end pipelines after the forums. So that's it. So whatever you find, if you're talking to a seller, get it on the forum, get it to us. If it's a wholesaler, we have a whole different conversation. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Anybody have anything else?
Well, it's pretty solid.
All right, guys. I will circle back later. I'm just trying to get home where I can take a shower because I didn't with the conference wrapping up. I didn't get much sleep, but I will be. I'm around the rest of the day, but I have about three more calls I got to return. Anything else we got to do? And Ryan, I know we got to talk. I got one call I got to do, and then I'll call you about Old Forge.
You guys, and if you ever if you guys want to do like a group chat or something like that, I'll put my number in there too. If Steve's not available or whatever, or even if you just want to like group text us, I mean, first one that gets it, would be happy to, get back to you. So let me see if I can just figure out how to put that in the comment here. Give me, I got to connect to YouTube. I'm not logged into that, but I'll just verbally tell you it's 570-333-8050, 570-333-8050. So, like I said, group text is great. Just let us know if you need anything because we're here.
Yeah, and guys, mine's 570-798-7051. And please, the reality here is that reach out to us personally on an individual level, even if you don't have anything going on. At least once a week, we try to reach out, without bugging you. We try to be like, hey, we're here, but let us guide you. Don't feel like you're out there like, oh, I'm drifting and I don't know what to do, so I don't want to bother these guys. No, we are doing deals together. We are partners. We're your mentors. Reach out to one of us, have a conversation, say, listen, I'm trying XYZ, and be specific. I'm trying XYZ. XYZ isn't working. The data sucks. How do I get better data? Where do I buy better data? Let us know where you're feeling the pinch, where you're feeling like Will said, he's getting zero equity deals. He's kind of throwing them away. Not that that's wrong, but what's the better play? Reach out to us, have a conversation. And truthfully, guys, in terms of either one of us are equal, reach out to both of us. But in terms of who's been on the front lines with sellers more often, I say many to one, it's Ryan. I'm not sure how the numbers break down, but Ryan's usually the front end. I'm usually the processing, the back end, the comping, the deal guy. I've done it all, but it's not, oh gee, I should reach Steve first. It's really either one of us. And in some cases I'll be like, hey, Ryan's really the guy to talk to you on that. But the point is, it's, and this is not pointing at anybody, but people tend to get connected to one of us, and there is zero wrong with that. That's fine. But, oh, I'll wait till Steve's available. No, reach out. And always, if you call and don't get the answer, text and do not let, text and we'll follow back. And don't let, I had this conversation with my VA last week. She's like, well, I asked you this 2 weeks ago and you never responded. Okay. I missed the question or I forgot it. If we don't get back in a, reasonable time, reach out to the other, and always, that's why the group text is key. You use your group text with us. It's you, me, and Ryan together, and we're both going to see it. And if for some reason we don't, later that day, next morning, whatever, help us help you by staying visible. Because we've had guys over the years who just went silent, and you reach out, there's no response. You reach out, there's no response. Eventually, is that an answer? Has that person made a different path? We have the tools now. We have the ability. All you guys got to do is let us help you figure out how to make the tools turn into deals. They will. The market is getting better for this. People are getting more motivated. Crap, bluntly, isn't going great in the real estate field or in a lot of other parts of our economy.
Yeah.
So, foreclosures are up. Times on market are up. Last thing I'll say is when I first got in this game back in 2009-ish, my conversation was great. I wasn't licensed or anything. Yeah, I can offer you 10. You go on the market, you might get 30. You're going to sit on the market for a year, 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years. That was the average runtime on the market back then. So my 10 now looks a lot better than 30 in 2 years. Then last 4 years, I had nothing. People were throwing money like stupid. Well, now it's going back the other way. And a lot of guys are going to get frustrated by, oh my God, the sellers are drying up. First of all, investor sellers never dry up. Second of all, that's good. That's good that sellers are drying up. Or I'm sorry, the sellers are, the buyers are drying up. That's okay. I was making not the most money. Ryan and I are doing a lot better now, but I was making a good return on little deals, buying for 10, selling for 15, and I can do a couple of those a month or whatever. I think at the time there was like a couple of those a quarter, but I didn't need a lot because my sellers were freaking motivated, and that's where it's going now. Foreclosures are going up. People are getting, the knives are coming out, and they're saying, hey, I don't want to I've carried mom's house for 5 years because I just didn't want to deal with it. Well, now my life is getting pitched somewhere else, and I need to get rid of mom's house. I need that tax bill gone. So don't get discouraged. Things will actually get easier with sellers in the next few months or year or whatever than you've seen them before.
Okay.
All right, guys. I will catch up with everyone later, but please do group text us and stay in touch with us, and we'll go from there.
Okay. We'll do.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right.